Hi, I'm Jan Ozer. Joining me today is Keith Wymbs, Chief Marketing Officer for Elemental Technologies. Keith, thanks for agreeing to chat.
No problem. Thanks, Jan. Thanks for having us.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about a white paper Elemental recently released called Software Defined Video, a game-changing framework for the video marketplace. So Elemental was founded in 2006, and they've sold appliances since then. Now I see a white paper about software defined video, and I wondered if that signaled some kind of shift, and I wanted to ask Keith about that. In this conversation, we're targeting 10 to 15 minutes, hopefully no longer than that. So Keith, getting started on the white paper, from my perspective, it seemed to have 2 points. One was ASICs versus software that used general purpose CPUs and GPUs. So that was one. And the other one was kind of a unified platform that can address appliances, private clouds, and public clouds. So let's address each point. You've always sold appliances based upon off-the-shelf components rather than custom ASICs. Why did you adapt that strategy?
You know, we adopted that strategy early on because we believed the world was changing in terms of video. You know, for the last 3 decades, essentially, the world of digital video has been evolving, and it's been a very controlled environment, right? You were always targeting a TV set in terms of professional grade video. And we saw with the adoption and launch of the iPad that things were really going to change, right? Before that, there was a lot of consumer grade video that was going out over the internet, but professional content wasn't necessarily at a critical mass. And the ability to be able to evolve very quickly with essentially a cultural phenomenon that's happening with bringing your own device to video consumption, whether it be a phone or a tablet, or eventually it became smart TVs and gaming consoles. To be able to cope with that, professional video producers and distributors really needed a software-based approach. And multi-screen obviously creates all types of renditions of content that are required to have a ubiquity of coverage. And when you want to monetize content, you need that ubiquity. And being able to keep up with that pace of change in the environment that was fairly clear for us wasn't going to be the way it had worked in the past, where you would have standards that would last a decade, all the way from the codec up to the protocols that are used, the metadata that's used in the broadcast world. It was clear to us that that wasn't going to be a way to go. And so we chose to focus on graphics processors and doing video compression on that because of the volume of content that was created, and the fact that we have software allows us to evolve very quickly on behalf of our customers.
So you're basically saying that for the first 30 years, a lot of the encoding hardware was based on ASICs, and now that's too slow, both from a developmental standpoint and a processing standpoint, and you need to work on off-the-shelf CPUs and GPUs.
Yeah, I mean, mostly from a development standpoint, ASICs are very powerful and they do what they do very well, but it's very limited. And to evolve that type of infrastructure, you have to basically pull it out and start over again. And it's how, if we look at direct competitors in our industry in the video processing space, it's how they've generated, good returns over the years. But customers don't really like that. It only works in an environment where things are deterministic. And that's clearly not the case anymore. We see all the time new devices coming out. There's new technology companies that want to, have a part in helping the industry move forward. And the level of innovation and the speed of innovation is just unheralded. And so you need software to be able to keep up with that. That's our fundamental belief.
Okay. So point one is, general purpose hardware as opposed to ASICs. Point two is the whole unified hybrid workflow across multiple platforms. Can you talk about the components of the stack and how that works for you?
Yeah, so we've always been a software company. We have different components of the stack going, and we build it all in-house. So we have what we call our Elemental Video Engine, which is essentially our core codec expertise. We've built codecs for MPEG-2 and H.264, and obviously now evolving to HEVC. We have what we call a media engine, which essentially takes that core video essence, the core kind of compression algorithms, and turns it into real products. And then at the top level, it turns into services engines, so different deployment models that can be enabled. In terms of the first way that we deployed was obviously with appliances, but we've also now enabled different types of virtualized machine instances as well as cloud-based deployments. And we really give customers that level of flexibility If they want to buy appliances, and the majority of our customers do want to have, a full solution where they don't have to worry about integrating all this together, they're able to do that. But there's also this general trend in the industry, even in the video industry, which is a bit of a laggard in the area of turning to SaaS-based models and cloud-based models and virtualizing their infrastructure. It's been delayed in the video space because processing for video is very complex algorithmically, and the general purpose processors have just now really caught up. And so, just like all IT industries have gone towards software, we see that now in the video world as well. And so it's a transition, phase that'll happen over the next decade or two. It doesn't all happen at once, but we want to allow customers to have that path, particularly when their CTOs and CEOs are saying, how are you going to get there if this becomes the way of the future, or if we want to take advantage of all this general purpose processing that we've deployed, how are you as a video operator going to be able to take advantage of that infrastructure?
Okay. I know how to buy an appliance from you. I know how to buy cloud services. What about the private? How do you price the private model? If I want to put it in a private cloud on my own shop?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially software based. So we have on the appliance side, we typically do perpetual licenses in software, and we've been selling. We've just started to disclose this, but we've been selling software based editions of our solution for a couple of years now, and it can be a model that's basically an annual subscription. So the customers have the right to use that technology, and we've ported it on top of both VMware as well as Citrix Zen, so that if they have CPU-based deployments and maybe don't have graphics processors in their infrastructure, they can take advantage of our software. Now there's a sacrifice that exists on the performance side. They're not able to get the same type of throughput through those systems, and you've seen that in terms of a lot of the testing that you've done in this area. But they have that asset available. We've even used it in scenarios where customers had deployed competitive video processing solutions on general purpose Intel CPUs, and we've gone in and been able to take advantage of all those resources that were deployed maybe a couple of years ago, and they could still use that underlying infrastructure. They're just using elemental software now, and the advantages that has. So those are the scenarios.
It really looks like a lot of the big companies are moving towards a hybrid solution, where they have some appliance and they have some cloud capabilities. Do you see that as a permanent model, or permanent is kind of a funky word in this market, but do you see that as an enduring model, or do you see that as kind of a step along the way to total cloud deployment?
I think it depends on the particular kind of segment that you're looking at. I think over time things are really going in the direction of cloud. I think the things that are maybe making a hybrid scenario a little bit more sticky, and not necessarily just a temporary transitional phase, is the fact that if you're running really 24/7 in the cloud, it's over time going to be more expensive. And so the applications that we're seeing are typically ones where there are spikes in demand. And that can be over the course of hours within a day. So the work that we're doing, for instance, with the BBC and their use of Elemental Cloud is because they have 2 hours out of 24 per day where their demand spikes by 10 to 20x. And so the remaining 22 hours of that day, that means that investment that they would make would be sitting idle, essentially. And so they're investing where 90% of the capacity isn't really utilized. And so the cloud is perfect for that. You also see instances of spikes in demand that can last weeks or months. The World Cup right now that's going on is a really good example of a month-long spike that happens. And so, we're working with, for instance, EVS, which is a well-known kind of infrastructure provider for broadcast services around live sports, to do all of the processing of the content that happens for their multi-screen offerings that they're providing to the rights holders around the world. They're using a cloud-based platform because owning that infrastructure would be really expensive for just a week. But over the course of a month, it's cheaper to do a cloud-based resource. We see lots of instances of that, and even as transitions happen, right? So we can see cloud being utilized for library conversions for HEVC. That's going to be at some point a race. We got into this market originally, 4 years ago with people wanting to have time to market advantage for iPad content creation. Existing solutions were going to take too long. Boards sometimes say, and CEOs sometimes say, you need to do this within 90 days. And that was a good proposition for Elemental. It's really what kickstarted us 4 years ago in terms of video processing. It was a real point of a problem that didn't have a solution without throwing tons and tons of equipment at it, and we were able to provide that.
Okay, so the iPad killed Flash, but really boosted Elemental Technologies.
Yep.
Couldn't resist. So you're saying if you can use an appliance 100% of the time, an appliance is still perhaps a better decision. On the other hand, if you can't keep it active a very very good percentage of the time, it's probably not.
Yeah, and then there's arguments as to, there's general philosophies as well, right? So, there can be broad sweeping decisions that are in the technology and IT departments of companies where they just say, no, we're going to adopt virtualization, across the board without, discretion to the particular application. And, if the video processing gets swept into that, then, and that does happen in a number of cases, then going virtualized is, something that we have to be able to solve. We did this because, customers were asking us to. Essentially, it's not a religion that we have. We just want everyone to be able to use Elemental software.
Okay. So you talk about your cloud offering as a platform as a service as opposed to a software as a service. Can you spend a little time differentiating those concepts?
Yeah, I mean, we think of a software as a service, a traditional SaaS model, as being really transactional. And so in the case of video, you could imagine, individual jobs being sent up into the cloud where, you have to convert a file over to multiple formats. And that job goes up into a SaaS platform, and it comes down when it's done. And the provider decides how to distribute that workload, maybe based on some settings that are done, but it's very transactional in nature. A platform as a service gives more control to the customer and allows them to set parameters that can manage essentially the scaling of that operation and the amount of, for instance, redundancy and capabilities that you could distribute it globally. And so that's what Elemental Cloud is. It really is a platform on which a customer can scale nodes upon nodes of processing power based on their understanding of the demand that they're going to have and understanding of the constraints that they have economically within their budget. So they can cap it at, I don't want to do more than 20 instances because I have time to spare, or I don't want to do more than 2 instances because I have time to spare. But other customers say, I want to have unlimited processing power because I have a time to market advantage around processing of some event that happens. And if I have to spin up, 1,000 nodes would be a lot. That would be good for Elemental. It doesn't happen very often. But we do have scenarios where we have, more than 100 concurrent nodes spun up of processing, for instance. And that's a decision that the customer makes, but it's not them sending one-off jobs in a SaaS model where you're just manually uploading. You're using APIs to do this. Typically, you're not using, just a pure web front end to do this.
Well, so what are the advantages in bullet point discussion?
Scale. I think in most cases we're well known to be a professional grade of offering, and our customers are doing thousands and thousands of jobs, potentially even in a day, and doing that on a SaaS platform is nearly impossible. Being able to have something that gives you the full cockpit and the ability to fly that plane as opposed to being a passenger. That's really the fundamental difference.
And you're saying by that you mean, when you upload files to a SaaS platform, they are very fast, but you can't discretely control how many cloud units are focused on your encoding. I mean,
that's correct.
How often does a customer really feel the pinch on that? I mean, what are you hearing from your customers who are switching over from a SaaS platform into your platform? I mean, is that a real frustration, or is it kind of marketing talk?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it is a real frustration because they will typically, go down this process of having to explore cloud platforms and cloud services. And it's real easy to explore it. It's easy to see, okay, I'm going to ingest a file. I'm going to do the transcoding, test it to make sure that it can do all the, enterprise and professional class of functionality that I want. And then they'll get the output and look at the quality levels. But really being able to scale it does require, that ability to interface with APIs and put it into an actual workflow that can run at scale. And this even happens on the live side. We've been talking a lot about files, but the ability, with the World Cup work that we're doing, we're not talking about a single stream, right? We're talking about multiple camera angles, multiple simultaneous events, similar to the work that we did with the Olympics. It requires a platform as opposed to if you're managing all those things individually. You could imagine, a bunch of consoles set up, one for each camera. You'd be having a difficult time, I think, managing that from a cloud-based perspective.
Okay. Your target market has traditionally been, pretty large publishers. Where are they with respect to the cloud? Have we passed the tipping point where they see cloud as being absolutely essential, or are we still, approaching it?
I think we're still approaching it. I think it's still early. I think this is a transition that's going to happen over the course of a decade. If we look at our customer base, we're approaching 500 customers. Obviously that means that we're still targeting the top end, but starting to move a little bit towards the upper middle of the market, I would say. But I think it's a case-by-case basis. It's mostly right now to solve specific problems about spikes in demand. We do have some customers that are more, based on general requirements from their leadership teams in terms of just adopting virtualized types of processing. But it's still early. It's not like all of our customers are even trialing it at this point. It's, on the order of 10% of our customers have gone down that path of doing parts of their processing in the cloud. And we have a few that are doing all of it, but generally it's because their business is based on not owning, capital infrastructure and things like that.
Okay. So I guess going back to the white paper, it really seems like it's, when I saw it, it's like, holy cow, is Elemental shifting strategies, but it's really not a shift as much as a delineation of what you've always been doing. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I mean, it's really showing the strategy. So we kept quiet the fact, I would say, for multiple years, that we had even ported our entire stack over to Intel processors, right? We did not disclose that to the general public. We did disclose it to customers, and we were doing it for reasons that they were driving us. They had specific needs. They had scenarios, for instance, where having graphics processors was overkill. They had scenarios where they had existing infrastructure in place that they wanted to reutilize in terms of the underlying hardware infrastructure. And it became clear to us that as we start to think about the migration to HEVC-based processing, that there's going to be a pretty fundamental battle, essentially, between traditional means of processing video based on ASICs versus whether or not software was had grown to the point that all disruptive technologies do, that it would be good enough for even hard processing applications like HEVC. And we decided to basically say that we believe the industry is going to software-defined video infrastructure and basically stake our claim to that space. And as you saw at NAB, we were able to partner and disclose the fact that Ericsson, who's well known in the video space for having ASIC-based solutions has said that there's a significant piece of the market that believes that software is vital, and that in those instances, Elemental will be the provider of software-based solutions within the Ericsson EVE framework. And so we thought the timing was right to disclose it at this point, try to lead the market towards further adoption of software-based technologies for video processing.
Okay. So let's we've been focusing on high-level stuff. Let's look at elevator pitches. In 15 seconds or less, why do I want to buy an Elemental appliance as compared to competitive products?
On the appliance side, I think the answer is similar in both, but it's really about the fact that we can have a very high performance system like an ASIC with the flexibility of a pure software-based solution. So we're able to do things that other software vendors can't do because of our underlying performance benefits, and we're able to have the right features and functionality very early in the customer's need for taking advantage of specific situations that arise. So that idea of power and flexibility is what we offer in the market for sure.
Okay. Is there any, I don't want to make this a softball type question, but how many other hardware vendors have this ability? I mean, is there anybody else who has this? A lot of people are moving to the cloud, but this whole, one interface controlling virtual appliance and cloud, is anybody else doing that, or are you guys kind of leading the pack there?
I think there are others that are trying to do it. There have been competitors that have been more traditional for us in terms of, hardware-based solutions, but have software as part of their story, so they bundle it as an appliance. And they tend to be partnering on the cloud side because I think they've had some challenges. It's not an easy problem. It's a very difficult, and committed effort. For us, it was 3 years to get to the point where we're at right now with cloud-based processing. I think that our proposition is very unique in the market because those that are strong in terms of virtualized processing, doing cloud-based processing, generally don't have the strength of situations where performance is needed. And then on the other side, if you have the performance to match ours, generally it's in an ASIC, and then you're weak on the software side. And so we don't find when a customer has those two requirements, which is an increasing percentage of customers, right? Performance can mean in the multi-screen world, can I create 36 outputs out of a single input? And very few solution providers can actually do that. And then it can also mean, can I process 4K HEVC in real time? And we're literally one of 2 or 3 vendors in the world that are able to do that. We're all using software right now. There are no ASIC-based solutions, and we're able to do a better job of it. We were the first to get to, being able to do it in real time. We were the first to be able to do it at a P60 level of frame rate. And so I think we are in a unique position in the market, and that's why we're growing so fast. We're clearly the fastest growing provider in the video processing space, and there have been third-party analysts that have pegged us at the top of our particular market focus, which is multi-screen content creation.
Okay, so we're 23 minutes, so we over-delivered, and I appreciate you taking the time today. It's a good white paper. It's available on the Elemental Technology site. Covers obviously what we talked about today in a lot more detail than we covered it, but I think it, as I said, it lays out 2 positions: one, software versus ASIC, and 2, how multiple, supporting multiple platforms with the same software stack adds a lot of value. So check it out. Keith, thanks for joining us. I'm Jan Ozer, and thank you for watching.